He wasn't just my best friend, he was the scaffolding of my life. We met when we were 9, bonded over a shared hatred of Brussels sprouts and a mutual obsession with the same clunky RPG. By 13 we were building tree forts and swearing blood oaths. By 17 we were plotting a future company that would make honest software for honest people, sketched on the back of fast food napkins. By 25, we had an actual LLC, a garage office, 2 second-hand monitors each, and a schedule pinned to the corkboard with a rusty thumbtack. If anyone had asked me who I trusted most, I would have said his name without blinking. If anyone had warned me that he'd use that trust like a crowbar to pry open my life, I would have laughed. The first fracture was so small I missed it. He forgot to send an invoice, then joked that I'd probably forget the rent if I didn't tape reminders to my face. He retold my stories with additions that made me sound clumsy or cheap. When I pulled him aside, he grinned and said, "Dude, I'm punching up your boring material. You want people to listen, don't you?" The room laughed with him, and I learned to swallow the sting like aspirin without water. Then came the rumor that I'd messed up an early client's credentials and almost got us sued. It was a lie, and easy to disprove, but he'd planted it in a group chat with people who would repeat it like a hymn. When I asked him why, he shrugged. "If people think you're the nice guy who makes mistakes, it makes me the fixer. That's a better story for both of us." He said it with the casual cruelty of someone rearranging furniture. There were late nights when he sat on the curb behind the garage, cigarette ember pulsing like a tiny lighthouse. "You're too sentimental," he told me. "Clients don't want a conscience, they want results. Let me be the one who says the hard things." He framed our partnership like a two-man heist. I was the conscience, he was the edge. At the time it sounded complimentary. In retrospect it was a script that ended with me handcuffed to the radiator while he drove away. The second fracture was financial. We split everything 50-50, but the numbers never felt right. I chalked it up to my weakness with spreadsheets and kept coding through the static. The bank app glitched, the payment gateway double-charged, Stripe's fees were weird this month. He smiled through each explanation, arms open, convincing, as if he were giving me shelter from a storm he was quietly manufacturing. And then my father got sick. I became a regular in white corridors and vending machine dinners, my brain full of lab results and hope rationed by appointment. He stepped into that vacuum wearing a hero's cape, telling clients I was handling a family emergency, giving speeches at meetups about resilience, shaking hands he'd never earned. "Don't worry about anything," he told me, hugging me in a hospital parking lot. "I've got us." It should have been a kindness. It was consent for a robbery. When Dad died, the grief rearranged the furniture of my head. I drifted for a month. He covered bills, posted condolences from our company account, sent flowers I didn't ask for. By the time I could look up, the narrative had hardened like epoxy. He was the steady one, I was the liability. Our friends wore that version of us like a uniform. He really kept everything afloat, they told me, meaning, we chose our side while you were out of the room. I decided to audit our accounts, not with anger, just the dull caution of someone checking the locks twice. A few numbers refused to line up. Transfers into a secondary account labeled holding. Reimbursements with pixel-perfect receipts whose fonts were slightly off. A fake is most dangerous when it's 98% true. I pulled more threads. The holding account sat under a name that wasn't ours but sounded close enough to pass in a noisy bar, Honest Systems LLC versus Honest Systems Solutions. Same bank, different state. Registered agent with a P.O. box and a phone number that went to a voicemail promising to get back to you ASAP, partner. The night I realized our community scholarship fund was siphoned through that shell, my hands shook so badly I had to hold the mug with both. We'd built that scholarship over 3 years of hackathons and charity streams, $50 at a time, a little engine for kids who couldn't afford laptops. He'd volunteered to streamline the disbursement process. Streamline, like a blade. I copied everything. Spreadsheets, PDFs, metadata, screenshots of Slack messages where he joked about paperwork magic. I put it all into a folder named Lemons and hid it inside a folder named Taxes, as if the universe would ignore a cliché. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I took long walks after midnight, tracing the same 5 blocks like a spell, rehearsing lines I'd never say. I could feel myself splitting, one self grieving, the other sharpening. When you realize betrayal has a shape, you start seeing it everywhere. I found text messages to his girlfriend, Jules, with timestamps that overlapped meetings he'd sworn were with me. Screenshots of him bragging in a private channel about having invested scholarship money in a short-term play that would double by quarter's end. A photo of him at a rooftop bar with a client I'd landed, telling them he was the sole technical founder, while I was the community guy. Every discovery felt like having a memory edited. My life hummed under a fluorescent light I hadn't noticed before. I didn't go to the police. I wanted to, but I was afraid of looking like a partner in crime. We'd signed the papers together. My name was on the LLC. My signatures, genuine ones, lived beside his counterfeits. That's the horror of the long con, your fingerprints are everywhere, and they are innocent and damning at once. So I did what he had done to me, but slowly, with a surgeon's patience. I started with Jules. Anonymous email. Subject line, you deserve the truth. Attachments, a folder with timestamps, a photo of him with someone who wasn't her, and a single sentence, compare his Apple Watch heart rate spikes to his calendar claims. Cruel, yes. Precise, yes. I told myself I was calibrating justice. When she confronted him, he called me from the sidewalk in front of our garage, furious, low-voiced. Someone's trying to wreck my life. I matched his tone. We should go to the police, I said. He cursed. Over a relationship? Over theft, I said, and the silence on the line felt like a hand finding a throat. He came in later, eyes glassy, and paced. You've been off, he said, like he was diagnosing a patient. I get it, you're dad, but we need you operational. I can't carry you forever. He placed a hand on my shoulder, rehearsed concern. Take a week. Come back clean. I wanted to leap across the desk and show him the folder named Lemons. Instead, I nodded and left. On the way home I stopped at the community center and asked for copies of our scholarship disbursement records, for the annual report. The director, Mara, smiled and printed everything. You boys are the good ones, she said. Her trust made me nauseous. My next email was for Mara. It contained 3 PDFs, a list of dates, a question: why did checks issued for the Ramirez twins' laptops get voided and reissued to Honest System Solutions? I watched the read receipt flicker green in my inbox and then sat in a dark room listening to my own breathing. The phone rang an hour later, Mara's number, and I let it die in my hand. I wasn't ready to hear her trust break. There's a point where revenge stops being fire and becomes engineering. I drew a diagram in my notebook, him at the center, lines to nodes, Jules, Mara, our bank, 2 clients, his brother who'd floated him a short-term loan, the meetup organizer he'd charmed. Every line was a pressure point. My plan wasn't to expose him in a single strike. It was to make the world arrive at him from all directions at once, leaving no safe door to escape. I called the bank and reported suspicious intercompany transfers, making sure to use my legal name and our EIN, promising I only wanted to clean up. The compliance officer's voice had that soft, dangerous politeness people adopt when they've already started a file. We'll review and get back to you. I could hear typing. In the background, somewhere far away, a printer started. 2 days later, a client called me, tone brittle. We've been told you'll need to reissue your W-9. I asked who told them. He hesitated. Your partner. Send me what he sent you, I said. The PDF he forwarded used our logo but listed the shell company's address. He was laundering legitimacy through our letterhead. I forwarded it, again anonymously, to the client's head of procurement with a single line, using vendor credentials to redirect payment is fraud. I didn't sign my name because my name felt like a bridge he could burn. Meanwhile, Jules became an earthquake. I didn't ask what she'd said, only watched the aftershocks ripple across his calendar. He left early one day, returned late the next, hollow-eyed. When he finally spoke, he skipped greeting, went straight to entitlement. "You told her," he said. I raised my eyebrows. "Told who what?" "Don't." He leaned forward. "We're not kids anymore. You don't get to play innocent." The word "we" hit me like a foghorn. How many times had I leaned on that pronoun to make sense of us? Now it was a rope he was trying to use to drag me into his pit. "I didn't tell her anything," I said, which was technically true. I had shown her. The board in my mind updated. Pressure lines brightened. The bank sent a formal notice requesting records. The community center scheduled a special audit. 2 clients asked for a pause to reevaluate engagement terms. He paced and cursed and then pivoted into a sales pitch about refocusing on high-margin products. It was his only trick: paint a different story on top of the old one and hope everyone prefers the new color. Then I found something I hadn't expected, a shared Dropbox folder called Roadmap 2.0, last modified at 2:13 a.m., full of pitch decks to investors I'd never met. Our product screenshots were there, our client logos pasted like magnets on a fridge, but the team slide showed only his face, and the origin story was a solo hero's tale. My name appeared once, in 8-point font, under Early Collaborator. He wasn't just stealing money, he was trying to erase me retroactively and then sell the cleaned narrative for seed money. That ignited something uglier than anger, a cold clarity edged with humiliation. I exported every deck to PDF, then compiled a timeline, dates of our first commits, emails to clients, the incorporation documents with both our signatures, photos of us in that stupid garage with pizza boxes like shingles. I sent the timeline to the 2 VC addresses he'd listed on the deck, with a cheerful opening, friendly heads up that your diligence should include a question about co-founder claims and pending community fund audit. I attached the audit notice I'd received from Mara that morning. I did not have to say, "He lies." The geometry said it for me. The audit day arrived like weather. We sat at a plastic table in the community center's small conference room, faces reflected in a cracked whiteboard. Mara's disappointment was a temperature in the air. Next to her sat a volunteer accountant, a soft-spoken man who turned pages with reverence. He asked reasonable questions. I answered plainly. My friend lied like he was inventing oxygen. He said my dad's death had left me erratic and he'd stepped in to handle administrative overhead. He said the shell company was a temporary pass-through to protect us during a restructuring. When the accountant asked, "Why does the pass-through deposit into your personal checking before moving to business?" he smiled, a smile I'd watched open doors for a decade. Banking error. We've been trying to correct it. The accountant nodded like a metronome and circled a number with a red pen. I said nothing. This was the hardest part of the plan, to let him talk, to let the absence of evidence do the cutting. Revenge isn't the speech, it's the silence your enemy is forced to fill. After the meeting, he cornered me in the hallway, voice low and poisonous. "If I go down, you go down," he said. "There's no version where you walk away clean." He meant it as a threat. He was also right. That's what everyone forgets about explosions, they don't negotiate with walls. So I added one more node to my diagram, me. I booked an appointment with a white shoe lawyer who charged by the quarter hour and gave advice like a scalpel. I handed him a sanitized record of what I knew. He told me 3 things. 1, I was late. 2, the bank would file a suspicious activity report whether I liked it or not. 3, my best move was to get in front of the story with full cooperation and a crisp timeline. You cannot save him, he said, and you cannot save everything you built together. You can only save yourself. I left with a homework list and the queasy relief of someone finally choosing a side. The next weeks were a choreography of collapse. The community center froze our access. The bank restricted our accounts pending review. 2 clients terminated with polite paragraphs. The VC addresses never replied, but I didn't need emails to know they'd seen enough. He came into the garage each morning like a man arriving at a crime scene he still believed he could charm his way out of. He talked about optics and turnarounds and narrative framing. He printed a fake new logo. He stuck it to the corkboard like a bandage on a bullet hole. The night Mara called to say the audit had confirmed misappropriation and they were escalating, I sat in the dark and put my head against the cold glass of the window. Across the alley, someone practiced piano badly and bravely. I thought about the first laptop we'd given out, the kid's grin, the way he had held the box like a future. I thought about the money diverted from kids like him and felt something colder than fury settle into place. The point of revenge wasn't to make my friend hurt. It was to make the wrong stop echoing. He showed up at my apartment at midnight, drunk and frantic, pounding until my neighbor yelled. When I opened the door, he pushed past me. "You think you're better than me?" he said. "You think you didn't benefit? You loved being the saint while I did the dirty work." He was crying without tears, the way people do when they're performing grief for themselves. "I built this," he said. "I carried you. You carried my trust," I said, and the room went very quiet. He slumped into a chair and covered his face. For a flicker of a second, I saw the boy on the curb, cigarette ember pulsing like a lighthouse. "I just wanted more," he whispered. Every door I opened, there was another one behind it, and the key was always one lie away. He looked up. "Help me fix it. Here's the part I'm not proud of," a line in me bent. We had been boys together. We had been men together. I knew the smell of his hoodie after rain, the rhythm of his laugh, the way he organized his pencils by how much he liked the color, not the length. There is a tenderness in old loyalty that doesn't evaporate under heat, it distills. For a moment I wanted to imagine a future where we fought the fire side by side and came out singed but alive. Then my phone lit up with a message from Mara, "We've notified families. Some are asking if they did something wrong. They think the delay is their fault." And the line inside me cooled into steel again. "No," I said. "I'll tell the truth. You can tell whatever story you want." He stood, swayed, and then laughed, a dry, exhausted sound. "You always wanted to be the hero," he said. "This is the only way you knew how." He headed for the door, then paused. "You think you're avenging your dad? You're just avenging your pride." He left it like a blade on the table and walked out. The bank's investigation moved like a glacier, slow enough to crack the ground. He tried to spin it as a dispute among partners. He hired his own lawyer, a man who sent emails in paragraphs that smelled like cigar smoke. He went on a podcast to talk about the burden of entrepreneurship and how narratives get weaponized against founders. He used my father's death as a paragraph break. The internet, being the internet, believed him and didn't, in alternating tides. Mara didn't do podcasts. She sent the audit package to the DA. That's when the second betrayal surfaced like a submarine. The shell company wasn't just his. Another signature lived on the paperwork, a neat, careful name I recognized with a lurch, Sam, our freelance bookkeeper, the one who mailed us gummy bears with every invoice and wrote "Rock On" in the memo line. I'd always liked Sam. He'd always liked us. Liking is not the same as loyalty. I traced transfers from the shell to Sam's personal account and sat back, stunned at my own naivete. The con had been a duet, and I hadn't even seen the dance. I updated my lawyer, who updated the DA, who updated nobody publicly. The DA's office wanted clean lines. They called me in for a statement, recorded on a machine that looked like it had opinions about moral philosophy. I told the story with as little theater as possible. I brought binders. I did not cry. After, the assistant DA, a woman with a soft voice and the eyes of someone who'd forgotten how to be surprised, said, "You did the right thing too late, which is still better than never." The arrests were not dramatic. No handcuffs in front of cameras, no shouted rights. He turned himself in with a carefully tragic expression, flanked by a lawyer who radiated billable hours. Sam surrendered, cheeks blotchy, whispering apologies to the air. The charges were sterile words that didn't hold the taste of the harm: wire fraud, misappropriation of charitable funds, conspiracy. I watched from the back of the courtroom as he entered a plea of not guilty and looked everywhere but at me. I lost almost everything I thought I wanted. The company limped, then lay down. Clients don't like smoke, even when you prove it wasn't your fire. The community center kept the door open for me, but the smell of disappointment in the hallways was a bell I couldn't unring. I sold my share of our assets to pay debts. I moved to a smaller apartment with a view of a brick wall that changed color with the time of day. I took contract work and kept my head down. People told me I was brave. People told me I should have known. Both were probably true. But revenge isn't measured in what you keep. It's measured in what stops. Jules started volunteering at the community center on Tuesdays. We nodded to each other at first, later we talked about small things, like which coffee on the block was least terrible and whether the new bus route would actually reduce delays. One afternoon she handed me a folded note. Inside was a single sentence: "I'm glad you showed me." She didn't sign it. She didn't need to. He called me once, months later, from a number with no caller ID. I shouldn't have answered, but there's a gravity to old friendships, like a planet you thought you'd left. "They want me to take a deal," he said without introduction. I leaned against the counter. "Okay." He was quiet. You could say I didn't know what Sam was doing. I almost laughed. "You're asking me to lie to the DA. I'm asking you to remember who we were." I closed my eyes and saw two boys under a tree, cutting our thumbs and pressing them together like we were inventing a new religion. "I remember," I said. "That's why I can't." He exhaled, a shudder through speaker static. "You were always going to do this," he said. "No matter what I did." "No," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "All you had to do was nothing." He hung up, and the silence after felt like a house with all the furniture moved out. At sentencing, he spoke for a long time about regret. He apologized to anyone who was hurt, the grammar of cowards. He mentioned my father again, and the judge's mouth tightened. Sam cried, openly. Mara read a statement that was only 4 sentences long and heavier than the room. The judge pronounced numbers that added up to years. He looked at me once, and I couldn't read the look, accusation, plea, or just the last weapon of a man who'd run out of disguises. I went home and opened the folder named Lemons. I expected catharsis, or at least a clean breath. What I felt instead was something quieter, a loosening. The file had been a living thing inside me, a dark heart dictating tempo. Now it was just data. That night I dreamed about our first scholarship kid again. In the dream, he opened a laptop and the screen lit his face and the whole room and then the hallway and then the block. Looking out my window at the brick wall and morning light, I realized something I'd been afraid to admit: I hadn't just wanted revenge. I'd wanted a refund from the universe. I'd wanted the version of my life where the friends stayed true, the company survived, my father lived, the community's trust never cracked. Revenge can cut the thief's hand, but it can't return the thing taken in the exact shape it had when it left. So I did one last thing, not to him but for the echo. I met with Mara and asked if I could rebuild the scholarship under a different structure, no single point of failure, no one person able to sign alone. We wrote bylaws that required multiple approvals and boring redundancies. We published the ledger, line by line, in a public repo, updated monthly. It was less efficient. It was safer. The kids didn't care about governance, they cared that the laptops arrived. But governance is how you apologize to the future. Sometimes I pass the old garage. The new tenant runs a bicycle repair shop. The corkboard's still there. Different thumbtack. New schedule. I stand across the alley and listen to the whir of trued wheels, the click of gears finding their teeth, the small miracle of mechanisms aligning. I used to think the opposite of betrayal was loyalty. Now I think it's maintenance, the boring, careful tending of small things so they don't collapse into big harms. And sometimes, late, I hear a piano through a window I can't identify, the same stubborn practicing of someone trying to turn wrong notes into music. I don't forgive him. I don't forgive myself for not seeing sooner. But I keep listening. I keep showing up on Tuesdays. I keep checking the locks twice and then once more, not because I'm afraid, but because I understand how much easier it is to break what is trusted than to rebuild what is broken. People say revenge leaves you empty. They're wrong about the direction. It empties the other person. It empties the room they took up inside you. It does not make you whole, nothing does. It makes space. In that space, if you are careful, you can put something back that doesn't ask to be believed, only to be kept honest. He will be released one day. He will tell a new version to people who don't know the old one. He will find a way to live with his choices, that is a talent of his. As for me, I carry a quieter talent I didn't have before, the ability to sit in front of a ledger and feel the weight of every line, to hear a promise the way you hear a note, slightly sharp or slightly flat, and to stop the song before the wrong key becomes the melody. If you've read this far, maybe you're looking for a verdict. Was it worth it? I don't like the terms of that question anymore. I didn't get back the years or the company or my father. I didn't get back the boy on the curb, ember glowing like a lighthouse. What I got was a room with the furniture put where it belongs and the doors that lock and unlock with keys that match the names on the lease. What I got were Tuesdays. What I got were ledgers anyone can read. What I got was a story that isn't as cinematic as a takedown, but holds together under daylight. And if I ever meet the kid with the first laptop again, I'll tell him the truest thing I know now: sometimes the bravest part of revenge is refusing to become the thing you're avenging.